Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. We're excited to share our latest learnings to help you successfully migrate your intranet to modern SharePoint. My name is Ben Skelton, and I'm the Vice President of Habanero, and I'm excited to be presenting today's webinar with...
Hello, I'm Ryan Bender, Product Manager for Habanero's Go Internet product.
And I'm Kelsey Stanczyk, Communications Manager at Sleep Number, an avid Go user.
Awesome. Let's get started as we've got a packed agenda today. First, we'll explore some of the benefits of modern SharePoint. Next, we'll share some of the migration risks and the gotchas we've discovered along the way. After that, we'll show you how you can make the move to modern easier. And finally, I'm excited to have Kelsey with us today to talk about Sleep Number's experience moving to modern and some of their learnings. So let's get started. For those of you that aren't familiar with Habanero, we help organizations create better experiences for their employees and customers. This may include helping organizations better understand and live their purpose and values, create stronger employee experiences, or help support them through a digital transformation, which is what we're going to focus on today. Now, for the benefits of moving to modern SharePoint. They may be somewhat obvious if you're using a legacy on-premises version of SharePoint where support has ended or is about to end, but we're also seeing organizations like Sleep Number that are using the classic version of SharePoint Online wanting to make the move to modern. Let's explore why. Ultimately, we believe the benefits are a better experience, stronger integration, platform innovation, and reduced risk. Let's take a moment to explore each. The first thing most people say when they see the new platform is often, wow, that looks so modern and nice. The changes aren't just cosmetic though. We've seen that the new user experience makes SharePoint much easier to use. One of the most significant ways the experience has been reimagined is with respect to content authoring. Content authoring is so much easier now, which is really important and valuable for organizations that want to support distributed content authoring scenarios. Finally, the new experience has excellent support for small screens and is completely responsive. Next up, stronger integration. Microsoft 365 is becoming more cohesive and better integrated, and modern SharePoint is no exception. The modern SharePoint experience has much better integration with Microsoft Teams, Forms, Yammer, and even the Power Platform. In addition, there are new concepts such as adaptive cards that provide pre-built simple integration with line of business systems and search connectors that enable Microsoft 365 search to index other repositories such as ServiceNow knowledge base articles. There's also a ton of innovation happening within modern SharePoint. Microsoft is continuously releasing new features and capabilities. The pace is quite impressive, and sometimes it can be hard to keep up with. This, of course, also includes the Microsoft Viva platform and components such as Viva Connections. Finally, modern SharePoint embraces modern development technologies, including the SharePoint framework and Microsoft Graph, which make customizing the platform much less challenging. The last benefit area is reduced risk. If you're using SharePoint 2010, you're using an unsupported platform. And we need to remember that extended support for SharePoint 2013 is ending early next year. However, we also have concerns about classic SharePoint within Microsoft 365. First, classic SharePoint development is dormant and has been for quite a while. There isn't any innovation happening in the platform. More concerning, however, is that we're starting to see features being decommissioned and experiences are starting to break. For example, many of our clients had search issues late last year due to features being turned off without warning. Ultimately, we're seeing the classic platform becoming a little more brittle. Finally, we expect Microsoft at some point to announce the sunsetting of Classic. Although Microsoft is really good at supporting technologies for a long time, it might make sense to move off Classic sooner rather than later. So with all those benefits, you might be thinking, that sounds great, let's do it. Let's migrate to modern SharePoint right away. There are a ton of benefits, but there are also some risks and gotchas which we're going to explore. These include modern branding, SharePoint's modern information architecture, the page modernization and migration process, legacy content links, and any customizations you have created and deprecated features. So let's dive in. The first is modern branding. When I talked about the benefits of SharePoint, I said that most people really like the new user experience and appreciate that it is modern and clean. However, there are stricter branding boundaries that will require you to set expectations early with stakeholders, especially your communicators and brand owners. When we designed intranets on Classic, we kind of had free reign, or almost free reign, and could create really heavily branded experiences. However, intranets on modern SharePoint all leverage something called Microsoft's Fluent UI design system and require you to integrate brand elements through color, imagery, and texture. There are huge benefits to this approach, as you can drop in a third-party web part, Microsoft web part, Habanero web part, or even a web part your team develops themselves, and they'll all fit in and look great. The downside is you have a little less control. In addition, it's important to note that all connected sites inherit their branding from the main hub site. This will be important to get in front of, especially if you have stakeholders in your organization that are used to having a lot of autonomy on their old SharePoint sites from a brand perspective. You'll want to spend some time educating them on the limitations of the new design system, but also on the benefits. In our experience, you can create great looking branded intranets in modern SharePoint. It just requires some creativity as you work within the limitations.
Next, we'll dig into the information architecture a little. When planning out your new information architecture for modern, there are some areas that will require a little more attention. We're going to be talking about 3 of them here: your intranet site structure, navigation setup, and permissions. One of the largest differences between classic and modern is the site structure approach. Here we see a visual representation of the familiar classic hierarchical approach using subsites on the left, and the new flat hierarchy used by modern SharePoint on the right. When your classic, or where your classic site typically lived under one site collection, the new modern portal now utilizes hub sites as the glue to connect and organize your sites in your portal. There are advantages in the hub site flat structure approach, most notably the ease in which you can reorganize or reassociate sites within your portal. Being familiar with the best practices and knowing the limits around hub sites during your planning phases will help reduce challenges during your implementation. When it comes to navigation, the common structural navigation in the classic world has now been replaced with a more versatile virtual navigation setup. There are 3 flavors of navigation available out of the box. You have your global navigation, your hub navigation, and site, or sometimes called your local navigation. While structural navigation could accommodate deep menu structures easily, the new modern hub site and site navigation will allow for only 3 levels of hierarchy each. This is really important to keep in mind for existing deep hierarchical sites when working through your new navigation structure. When it comes to permissions, previously your old groups created at the root of your portal typically worked well because the portal was commonly located in one site collection. SharePoint groups, though, are only available on the sites they are created in. Now, in modern, your portal consists of multiple site collections on your tenant. Setting up permissions using M365 groups or security groups through Azure Active Directory makes these groups available tenant-wide for selection, allowing for easier maintenance and group reuse throughout your portal. Using these groups will also allow you to take advantage of SharePoint's audience targeting capabilities. Now let's talk about page modernization and migration. So the 2 terms, modernization and migration, are often used interchangeably, but they are 2 different activities requiring different preparation. Of course, when moving to modern, you always have the copy and paste manual option available to you, but most intranets consist of hundreds, if not thousands of pages nowadays. This is where modernization comes into play. Modernization is the act of converting classic publishing pages to the modern SharePoint page architecture. The page move itself is not as simple as moving your content pages from the classic page library over to the new modern site page library and expecting them to work. It's just not that easy, unfortunately. Instead, we automate this by using Microsoft's PnP PowerShell modernization scripts, which they get you about 50% of the way there. What we've found based on previous engagements, these will need to be enhanced iteratively throughout the project just to get you to higher levels of success. You won't get to 100%, just setting some expectations here. Some work tips to consider while you're doing the modernization: work out your page template designs in modern first, so the scripts can be adjusted to accommodate your desired layout. It is extremely important to know your classic pages, where your classic pages are going to move to in the new portal, especially in cases where content is being relocated to different sections of the portal. It will save you a lot of time of having to move pages around afterwards. And finally, make sure your metadata fields and content types are aligned from your source to destination environments. This is key if you're moving lots of metadata along with your pages. Now that the modernization of pages has happened, one of the most important activities will be post-page cleanup. Automation will get you a decent way to the finish line, but as stated earlier, it will not get you 100% of the way there. There will be a need for people to go to each page moved over and do a manual inspection of these pages. The amount of time required will completely depend on the amount of content moved over and the size of your team available to you. Some pages may only take a few minutes to clean up, while others could require much more. It may actually even be easier to recreate the pages from scratch in Modern because of the better authoring experience. So in summary, it's important to make sure you budget enough time, engage your stakeholders early. Complex and interactive content may need to be recreated or re-envisioned. Check for broken links and images, and your page design layouts may need adjustments. So when we talk about migration, this is the act of moving files, documents, images, and list items to the new Modern sites. I think it's pretty safe to say that some of you will already have an idea of some of the pain points that happens in migration projects. This will be no different. There will be the same familiar gotchas around typical document migrations involving metadata, taxonomy, permissions, and all the other migration fun that happens in these engagements. If you are moving large amounts of files though with metadata, it is highly recommended to use a third-party tool like AvePoint or ShareGate, as they do have built-in capabilities that will make the move that much easier for you. And this is so important. Make sure to include all interested business parties in these activities, but most importantly, IT in the modernization and implementation phases, as there will be some tasks that will definitely require their help and most likely approval beforehand. Nothing will delay a project faster than not having everyone knowing what is happening.
And next up, legacy content links. Let me be super clear. Links will likely be the most challenging part of your move to Modern. Something you might not consider is how many things across your organization link to your intranet. When you move to Modern SharePoint, those links are going to change. Links embedded in your learning management system, in bookmarks, embedded with other platforms and tools, in your policies, in your procedures, and even offline PDFs often linked to your intranet. These links will have to be updated or you'll have to figure out how to redirect links to the appropriate content in your new Modern site. A few recommendations we have. 1, track all of the systems and or pages that link to your intranet. Analytics might be useful in identifying pages that are often linked to directly, and then you can work backwards to think about the various systems that might link to that page. 2nd, consider implementing an informative 404 page suggesting where users may go to find what they're looking for. You might even want to take it a step further and make smart 404 pages with URL mapping for better suggestions, but of course, this would be some custom effort. You could also update the 404 page to ask users which location they came from to understand what systems or tools might need to be updated. Next, you're going to want to update as many systems as you can to point to the new location. And finally, create a communications plan and communicate to employees that things won't be perfect and they'll have to update links and bookmarks.
And finally, customizations and deprecated features. There is enough difference between classic and modern platforms fundamentally and technically to the point where there is no all-encompassing easy button available for these migrations. Modern SharePoint web parts are built differently from classic SharePoint web parts, so using classic web parts in the modern sites is not available. When it comes to feature parity, it is getting closer between the two platforms, but in some cases there may not be a like-for-like equivalent. In these cases, the way you handle certain functionality may need to evolve. Classic SharePoint utilized master pages and page layouts, which allowed you to easily make some changes to a single file, potentially affecting a large number of pages at once. Modern, on the other hand, uses page templates, much like a Word document template, which are one-time setup instances. Any retroactive changes to a large number of pages will not be possible in Modern, like it was in Classic. Make sure you have your page designs sorted out beforehand, or you may find yourself doing small, repetitive tweaks to every page migrated afterwards. The modernization of complex content will have challenges moving over to Modern. This includes markup with inline styles, complex tables such as tables within tables, and interactive or scripted elements on the page. Different approaches or even custom development may be required to implement this type of content if that is still required in the new portal. And finally, search. Modern search works with the new Microsoft search engine, which is used throughout the M365 platform. It utilizes the Graph API to give users a more personalized results. The search experience itself will be less customizable than what you may be used to using the old SharePoint search engine, but there are methods to recreate the old user experience with some of the PnP search web parts that are available. You will just need to make sure to plan around creating these pages and to configure the web parts if that is the experience you are looking for.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So how do you make the move to modern SharePoint easier? Habanero has had an intranet product called Go for over 6 years that helped organizations create a great intranet on Microsoft 365's classic SharePoint experience. In 2019, our team decided to completely reimagine Go to help organizations create the best intranet experience on modern SharePoint. At its most basic, Go is a set of services, intranet features and capabilities, and ongoing support. From a services perspective, we've got the knowledge, tools, and scripts to make the move to modern as painless as possible. As Ryan talked about, we've completed several migrations and have developed many enhancements to reduce the modern page cleanup burden. From an intranet perspective, there are several important intranet capabilities that are missing from modern SharePoint and Viva connections. Go bridges the gap and introduces features that drive intranet engagement and make managing an intranet on modern easier. Finally, we talked about how Microsoft 365 is innovating and evolving at a rapid pace. In this new world, support and regular updates are essential to make sure your intranet continues to thrive and you're providing the best experience for your employees. Go includes regular updates, ongoing support, including intranet consulting, and regular analytics reviews to ensure your intranet gets better over time and you're getting the most out of your Microsoft 365 investment. I talked about the missing intranet capabilities on the last slide. There are a ton of them, but some of the largest ones we hear from clients are preference-based news, events and announcements, automated left and or right-hand navigation on content pages, automated section pages and automated breadcrumbs, an app catalog, and of course, bookmarks and favorites. And finally, scripted site provisioning and automated cross-site configuration and content updates. Now, I'm super excited to turn things over to Kelsey from Sleep Number, who's going to take you through Sleep Number's move to modern, where you'll see some of these features come to life and some of their lessons learned having gone through the move. Over to you, Kelsey.
Thanks, Ben. So thanks for having me. Like Ben mentioned, we moved to modern using Go from being on classic SharePoint, also using Go. So moving to modern really allowed us to deliver on a dream a few years in the making. For Sleep Number, we had been using 4 different intranets, all based on classic SharePoint, but all 4 different divisions of our company. So this upgrade gave us more functionality and created the opportunity for us to unify our digital workplace under one URL with targeted information based on each user's role, which was not possible in classic SharePoint, and especially the way we had it set up. So I think, Ryan and Ben both touched on some of these points before. As a personal anecdote, we were using Classic Go in the past, and as we were finalizing content for this refresh project, I went back to an old site to try and make an edit, and I couldn't. I just couldn't remember how to do it. And it reminded me that before using Modern, I thought the Go platform on classic SharePoint was easy and awesome, and it was at the time. But this put in perspective to me how much easier and straightforward the author experience is in Modern. So I'm excited to show you what we've built. So SleepLife is the name of our new intranet. And as I mentioned, audience targeting was a big draw for this project. And the upgrades available on Go has allowed us to create an experience that team members have come to expect without the complicated coding that could have been a possibility. So starting on the homepage here, you'll see Flash at the top of our homepage. These are quick, important announcements that we share with audience targeting applied to ensure that the correct groups see them. So they show up as notification bubbles in the Springboard as well. You see that red dot all the way to the right, a very cool feature that we didn't have before. Featured news we use as a company-wide feature. So you see some categories in the corner, but also this is a way for us to pull up those two most important things company-wide, regardless of your news preferences. And then what's happening at Sleep Number. This section is where all our other news ends up. So we apply a bunch of categories which allow each user to customize their experience and select what they subscribe to in that Springboard settings bar. And a few categories are mandated, but most of them are up to our user to select so that they can customize their experience. And if something doesn't apply to their role or they're not interested in it, they don't see it. Below this, if we scroll, there's a banner area. And this is a cool feature for us. It's another way to get some featured news that maybe has a bit more longevity. So we swap this out about monthly to share exciting events or a theme for the month. This month was Sleeping Smarter for Life. And then you see events as well. We share some of the services and experiences available to team members company-wide. And in the past, only one of our 4 intranets had this type of feature, the one on Go. So it's a great upgrade to the experience company-wide visually and with these different features too. There's one more part I want to go through at the bottom of the homepage. It's called By the Numbers. This is a kind of a nice to have, but it's a fun feature that we use Go for that shares quick stats about our company that team members may want to know. They may need to share with vendors or partners. Just kind of a nice pulse check of where we're at as a company. Here's our zoom in on navigation. So as Ryan mentioned, the flat structure allows us to link and rearrange much easier than in the past. And for us, that's really important based on some user feedback of how can we kind of put a sticker on it to make sure people are seeing what they need without doing a bunch of rearranging and heavy legwork. So our navigation is also audience targeted. Right now, what you see is my admin view. So you're seeing everything, but our standard user would see only home, news, their division, perhaps sales, product hub, promotions, who we are, company process and resources, well-being. Leading your team is a gated people leader area where we're able to target and share leader resources based on that audience targeting and role using those specialized groups that we were able to create and apply to the site. On the next slide, we'll go into an example of a landing page for a division. So in the past, these divisions maybe had their own total intranet. It caused a lot of duplicative work, a lot of rework, and not multiple sources for truth. So how do you know what's right? This allows us to curate content relevant to that group while still giving them access to the same information company-wide that everyone else does. If we scroll through this page, you'll see it's curated Flash, curated news. So regardless to if they subscribe on the homepage or not, some tools they use, and then a mock-up of their navigation at the bottom. Say a user is not in this division, we put that there so they can still navigate through that part of the site. And on the next page, I'll share our well-being initiative. So this is a company-wide initiative that we have some significant legwork behind. And on our well-being page, we put a lot of time and effort into this program. And it's an example of how we were able to create an experience to mimic a consumer website that our users are used to and enjoy, and quite frankly, expect even in their work lives. The beauty of the Go platform was that we were able to do this without knowing any coding or technical tricks. Our communications team was able to create this page. And if you scroll through, you see how easily we were able to make this look like a highly coded page. It's very customizable. We're using a few different web parts to make this a really seamless, beautiful experience that you want to click into. So a few considerations. Start early. I think we started discussing the project at least 6 months before we even started any real hard work. Our previous intranets were made up or managed rather by 2 separate teams, which gave us a huge collaboration opportunity that allowed us to move as quickly as we did, but also required quite a bit of planning. I had a co-leader, Megan, and her team managed a lot of the detailed information and the knowledge side of things, while my team, being communications, we managed more of that company-wide facing content and the change plan and communications and expectation setting that way. It was helpful to have 2 brains on the strategy, dividing the work, owning different partner relationships as we managed the details of this project, and to have the full manpower of our teams. I mean, we had a lot more people than we otherwise would have working on this. And when it came to page cleanup, especially, like Ryan mentioned, it's a lot more work than we expected. But with this large of a team, we were able to make it work. The other piece, engage your partners early and often. Our IT department and all partners were aware and involved from the beginning, but we engaged our partners who own content in the initial discover phase, as well as our content audit, so they could start their planning for link swaps, for content upgrades, and even helping set the vision of what this should look like. And it gave us an opportunity to reimagine some content in a really thoughtful, proactive way. IT was involved for months prior to beginning the work to understand the needs and resources, which was pivotal to ensure we could use the system and audience targeting the way we envisioned. I think the permissions that they were able to help us implement were probably the largest piece of this puzzle, because otherwise our audience targeting would not work. Our groups wouldn't be correct. So that was huge. I highly encourage you to partner closely with that team, make some best friends. And then learning and development was another team for us that was a pivotal partner, especially when it came to linking and swapping out resources that previously pointed our team members to our old sites. Have a change plan, one that extends far beyond launch. So again, the follow-up, there is a tail end. It's not over on launch day. There's link cleanup, there's page cleanup. We launched and the site wasn't perfect. It's still not, but we're working on it every single day. And this also gives us the runway to keep making improvements and knowing that it's still always going to be an upgrade and a work in progress for our team. It's been a fun experience, learned a lot, but there's a lot to consider too. And I think, back to the team support, I don't think we would have moved as quickly or been as effective with our launch if we hadn't had the full support of our partners and then this double team partnership, because it really was important to see every angle of our sites.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelsey. That was awesome. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. Yeah, if you want to learn more about Go, please visit connectwithgo.com for more information, or reach out to events@habaneroconsulting.com. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Ryan. Huge thank you to Kelsey. It's always amazing to have somebody share their experience. Yeah, thanks very much, everybody, and have a great day.